Hello everyone and happy Friday. I'm Nitahone and I bring you an MTG Top 10 each and every week. This week we're continuing with the topic of Amonkhet Limited, which we talked a little bit about last week. In this list, we're talking about the 10 cards in Amonkhet I like drafting the most. Keep in mind, this is not the 10 best cards to draft in Amonkhet. While I do think all the cards on this list are good, they're certainly not the 10 best cards in all of Amonkhet, just the 10 cards I enjoy playing with the most. So let's go ahead and get started. At number 10, I have Soul Stinger. He made the list last week. He's a card I think people underrate, and he's a card that gives you a ton of value. I sort of have him here as a stand-in for all of the -1/-1 counter-themed creatures in green and black, mostly because I love the design on them in general. I love the archetype. It's probably my favorite archetype in the format. It's just got so much flexibility, and that's really important to me. Being able to choose with Soul Stinger, for example, whether you want him to be a 4-mana 4/5, or whether you want him to be a 4-mana 2/3, who when he dies puts -1/-1 counters on your opponent's creatures, it's a great decision to have. Both halves of that are very good. You do usually have to kill or weaken one of your creatures to make him a 4/5. So usually I find myself playing him as a 2/3, and he gets me 2-for-1s all the time. And I love 2-for-1s. That's something we're going to see in this video a lot. I'm probably going to say 2-for-1 a lot of times in this video, but 2-for-1s go a long way towards helping you win a game of Limited. If you can use one card to get rid of 2 of your opponents, you're eventually going to win because you're going to outcard them. And that's one reason I love Soul Stinger and the -1/-1 counter theme in general. At number 9, I have Oketra's Attendant. Speaking of 2-for-1s, Oketra's Attendant can net you 2-for-1s because of the cool flexibility that she has as well. A 5-mana 3/3 flyer, you can cast her that way. That's not the worst. It's not a bad rate. But what makes her really cool is that she has cycling. So you can decide to cycle her in the early game, and then in the late game you can embalm her. So basically, no matter what you do with her, you're going to get a 2-for-1. If you cast her as a 3/3 and they have to use a removal spell on her, or she trades with something, and then you embalm her, you're getting a 2-for-1. If you cycle her early and then you embalm her late, you're still getting a 2-for-1. And Oketra's Attendant is a card I like a lot because of that, because of the flexibility it has that I value a lot in Limited when a card can do more than one thing for you. So on to number 8. At number 8, I have Start to Finish. This doesn't really get you 2-for-1s exactly, but I love the flexibility once again. This set has a lot of really cool designs. The Aftermath cards, the -1/-1 counter cards, the cards with cycling, make it so this set has a lot of cards that give you choices in a way that we don't always have in a set. So Start to Finish is great because in the early game, you can use it to make 2 1/1 white warrior creature tokens with Vigilance for 3 mana. That's not terrible. It's not ideal either. But in the late game, you have Finish in your graveyard. And actually, I like basically all of the good Aftermath cards. This is just my favorite because it's the only one on the list. And you can use Finish from your graveyard in the later part of the game to kill a creature. Obviously, you can cast the 2 halves together and basically lose a 1/1 warrior that you get and kill your opponent's creature. You can sort of look at it as 6 mana, make a 1/1 white warrior creature token, kill a creature. You can sometimes get a 2-for-1 with that because you're going to have a 1/1 token, but the value you get from that token, even if it doesn't equal a full card, in addition to just killing, straight up killing a creature, is very good value, and I like Start to Finish a lot. At number 7, I have Gravedigger. Gravedigger is one of my favorite cards in every Limited format it shows up in. He just, speaking of 2-for-1s, gets you 2-for-1s. He's 4 mana for a 2/2, and he gets you one of your creatures back from your graveyard. He gets better if you have big bomby creatures. Getting your God back from the graveyard or your Sphinx back from the graveyard is especially crippling for your opponent. But even if you're just getting back a 2/2 or a 3/3, you're getting a lot of value, especially because the Gravedigger can then trade with something. The Gravedigger also has a useful creature type in this format, as the black-white zombie deck is a very, very real thing. It's a very good deck in the format when you get there, and Gravedigger fits into any black deck, but obviously the zombie creature type helps him out, and I like Gravedigger a lot. At number 6, I have Lay Claim. This doesn't exactly get you a 2-for-1, but it kind of does. Now let me explain. With Lay Claim, one way to look at any of these you control enchanted permanent cards is to look at it as destroy target creature and get a copy of that creature in play. It's not quite that good because it can blow up your aura, right? So it's not quite that good, but that's one way to think about it, to realize the immense amount of value you get. Stealing your opponent's best permanent is huge. You can steal planeswalkers with this thing. You can steal giant, scary creatures with it. You can steal anything you want with it, and that is incredible. And they added cycling to it. So back to the different choices this format lets you make. In the early game, you can cycle it if you need to. And then in the late game, when you have it in your hand or you draw it, you can just steal your opponent's best permanent. I love Lay Claim a lot. It's one of the better mind control effects we've seen in a limited set in a while. It's very strong, and I'm very happy to have it in any blue deck that I make. At number 5, we have Nest of Scarabs. So I really enjoy build-around cards when they actually can pan out, and this is an example of one that can. I drafted a 3-0 deck a few weeks ago on Magic Online that I recorded. I'll try to remember to put the link in the description below, where I had 2 Nests of Scarabs, 2 Decimator Beetles, and Oketra, and the deck was ridiculous. Obviously, you're not always going to quite get there to that degree, but the deck was nuts. I was just making insect tokens everywhere, putting -1/-1 counters everywhere. It was incredible, and it was probably the most fun individual deck anyway that I've managed to make. The reason it doesn't get higher on this list is I don't think you can consistently do it enough. You can't just like first pick Nest of Scarabs and build around it and get there. If the deck's not open, if other people are in black-green, you're probably not going to get there. But it is so fun when you do get there with Nest of Scarabs. And speaking of black-green, at number 4, I have Decimator Beetle. This guy is insane. You don't even need to have any other -1/-1 counters around, which is important because I think a lot of people, including myself, the first time they read this card, read the second clause as saying you have to remove a -1/-1 counter from a creature you control and put it on another creature. Instead, the first part doesn't have to happen. You don't have to have a creature to remove the counter from, but you always get to put a -1/-1 counter on one of your opponent's creatures. Generally, that means Decimator Beetle's attacking as a 4/5 and weakening one of your opponent's creatures. Then if you add other -1/-1 counter synergies like Nest of Scarabs or Oketra, things just get insane, and your board is just going to destroy your opponent completely. Decimator Beetle is my favorite of the build-around uncommon cards in this set, and it's the only one that made this list. At number 3, I have Angler Drake. I cannot say no to a Mana War effect. I always love them. I love the tempo they give you. And this one is one of the better ones we've seen in Limited in some time. It's no Separatist Void Mage or something like that. It is a giant dragon that bounces things. You know, I guess it's technically a Drake, but you know what I mean. It can win the game with its own stats, with its own body, in addition to completely screwing up your opponent's tempo. You can bounce a creature that has an aura on it that's especially gratifying. You can bounce a creature token that's been embalmed that's kind of a problem. Just get rid of it permanently. You can also just bounce your opponents like Greater Sandworm or something and really put them behind because they just have to cast a huge thing all over again. I love Angler Drake. I first pick them anytime I can, and I play them and draft them anytime that I can. At number 2, I have Bounty of the Luxa. This card is awesome. I've also drafted some very good decks with Bounty of the Luxa. I'll try to remember to put them in the description below as well. It is insane. Like, aggro is a thing in this format. It's very true. You can't build a deck that's completely dirtily in this format and hope to win because you have to have a way to control the red-white, red-green, red-black decks that can just curve out and destroy you with their exert creatures, right? And that's true, but Bounty of the Luxa, if your deck has the resources to get you there, if you have lots of ways of bouncing and killing creatures, slowing down creatures, blocking creatures, Bounty of the Luxa will just win you the game. Alternating between drawing a card and putting mana in your mana pool that is very useful in a set filled with mana sinks, it will just win you the game from the value it gives you. I've won a lot of games off of Bounty of the Luxa. I drafted 2 once, which was one of the most fun things I did in this format. Still not quite as fun as the black-green -1/-1 counter deck, but it was very fun. I've drafted one of them on numerous occasions. It is very good. You can do stuff with Quarry Hauler with it if you want to, incidentally. Like if you want to make sure you draw cards 2 turns in a row, you can play Quarry Hauler. Quarry Hauler is a card that sort of just barely missed this list for me. I do enjoy playing that card a lot, so that is why I'm talking about it. But love Bounty of the Luxa. I think it's a first pickable gold card, which there aren't a lot of in this format, but it is certainly one of them. You do, again, have to have a deck that can combat aggro in the early going, or you're going to get run over. But if you can combat it, Bounty of the Luxa will just win you the game through card and mana advantage. And at number 1, probably coming as no surprise to you, assuming you've watched like all of my draft videos out so far, is Drakehaven. Now, I talked about how Nest of Scarabs is not the kind of card you can first pick and just build around and hope things go okay, because sometimes it just won't be open. Drakehaven, you can do that because cycling is everywhere. It doesn't matter what your other color is. You can be blue, black, or blue, white even, and you'll have enough cycling going around. You can suddenly play all of the terrible 1-mana cyclers, like the one that mills your opponent, because now you have Drakehaven, and Drakehaven will win you games easily. It will create tons and tons of tokens while drawing you extra cards when you're cycling. It is just some insane value. Drakehaven is one of the strongest cards in this set, and it's a first pickable rare that you want to build around. And if you see it in your second pack and you're kind of in blue, think about warping your whole draft around it. That's not something I say a lot because it can be dangerous, but there's just so much cycling to go around that having a Drakehaven deck is great. And what's more is your cycling cards will eventually get you to your Drakehaven if you don't have it. So it sort of synergizes well, and it works well against the aggro decks because you can keep making these Drakes to block your opponent's creatures. Eventually they run out of gas. You're never going to run out of gas if you have Drakehaven, basically. Love the card. I've drafted it, I don't know, 4 or 5 times in drafts I've recorded. Again, I'll try to remember to put them in the description below. It is great. So Drakehaven, my favorite card in this format, in what I think is a very, very good format in general. I enjoy it a lot. As you could tell from the video, I love the decisions that they've given us with cycling and aftermath, and the -1/-1 counter deck especially. Those are all really cool cards that give you lots of choices, and I think adding sort of these additional decisions makes the game a lot more interesting. So thanks for watching this video. Let me know in the comments what your favorite card or cards are in Amonkhet to draft. Let me know if you think any of these cards suck and I'm wrong about them. That's always useful to talk about too, which is good to talk about limited. Also, don't forget to subscribe if you want to catch more of my top 10 lists and more of my draft videos and so on. And finally, my content is sponsored in part by 5colorcombo.com. They are a great website for all things Magic. They have a sweet app where you can like build decks on your phone and then also build decks on your computer. It's all synchronized together. That's very cool. And they're also very well known for their playmats and creature tokens with original art, which you can see here. Their newest group of tokens and playmats is called the Gods Edition. You can see the cards all depict, gods, and the playmats anyway depict gods. The creature tokens depict sort of godlike creatures, even as angels, knights, soldiers, and everything else. They're very cool art. They're very cool tokens to have at your FNM. Other people will want to know where you got them because they're so cool. Point is, you can head over to their site and use my discount code NEEDSAHONE5 to get a 5% discount on these products. So thanks for watching.